All right, what's this video?
Our biggest mistakes.
All right, this is where we come clean on all the stupid shit we've done traveling these last 2 years.
Yep.
We could still do something really stupid in the next month, so
yeah, there's still time.
stay tuned. The first one that comes to mind, and this is one that I certainly, when it happened, I just wanted it to go away and to pretend like it never occurred. We hit Mexico, and I had been to Baja a million times, not quite a million, but a lot of times since I was a little kid, 12-year-old or something like that, building homes for Habitat for Humanity. Been racing in Baja since like the late 90s. And Sonora, Mexico, and it was all, I got Mexico down pat. This first country is going to be easy. And so from reading on Overlander, we knew that you're supposed to get a temporary import permit for the rest of Mexico, and you need to get your passport stamped for the rest of Mexico. But for Baja, Sonora, no worries. And some people said when you leave Baja or Sonora, you'll be able to get all that then. You know, it's sort of like you're leaving the sort of Americanized desert part of Mexico, going into real Mexico. You know, Baja, almost like its own country. So we did some of the process, but we didn't get the vehicle import, right? We didn't temporarily import the vehicle into Mexico. We just hit Baja. We had months of good times, camping, exploring, no worries. We hit the ferry at the tip of Baja, right? We're in La Paz. We want to go to mainland Mexico now. And they say, oh, well, you need the temporary import permit. I was like, cool, where do I get that? And the guy at the ferry, he seemed worried. And that should have been my tip right there. We went back to the immigration office, and they said, you can't get it here. You got to get it at the border. And I said, okay, but we didn't. And we never do when we go to Baja.
Now we're here.
Yeah, now we're here. And, you know, can we get it? What can we do to get it? Well, most Americans fly back to the border and get everything taken care of and then fly back to their truck. And I'm going, wait, what? Flight back to, you know, northern Baja or the United States and then walking to the border crossing but I won't have my truck. How do I get all this done? They go, well, that's the way to do it. Well, it doesn't make any sense, you know. And they're like, well, we can't do your paperwork here because we don't, you know, this isn't when you entered the country. I was like, yeah, but if I go back, that's not when I entered the country either. I'm going months after. Well, anyway, you need to go back there and do it. Okay, so people had warned us about this. I had heard about it. We read about it, and we read just enough circumstances or comments or instances from people saying, don't worry, we just did it down at the tip of Baja before we got on the ferry.
So we thought, cool, we'll just do it down there.
Yeah, all these other people are worrywarts. So we couldn't do it. We went to this office like 3 times. Eventually, the lady, who was not very nice, but she saw us in there like for a 3rd time 2 days later, and she goes, get out of here. If I see you trying to get someone to give you this stamp again, you know, I'm going to call someone. I'm going to call the police or whatever. And I said, well, no, we're just trying to sort this out. You know, we printed out the form from online. Can you fill out the form? Because you can do it online from the United States. And she says, no. And I said, well, what if we went to the airport and got a stamp? She goes, don't do that. So there may have been a chance we could have done something a little shady and gotten this done. At this point, I realized it's my error. It's my mistake. The only way we can undo this, I'm not flying back to the U.S. and leaving her.
We also realized that because we were just about to pay for a ferry to go to mainland, the cost of that would have about equaled the cost to drive around. So we said, it takes us a couple more days, so it wastes our time, but we have plenty of time. It doesn't really add up money-wise to make a big difference. So
no, it wasn't worth doing a flight back. And then once you pay for the ferry to the town we're going to be at, roughly that is what it'll cost in gas to get there. So let's just enjoy the trip. So we headed north, and as we're heading north through Baja, you know, I was just going to put down a 12-hour day and just drive. You know, I don't want to drive at night in Mexico, but until that sun dropped, I was going to just drive. But the thing I'm admitting to is the huge screw-up of not doing the paperwork properly when we entered Mexico. And I'd been to Mexico so many times that I thought I knew better. So we drove all the way. We drove all that day. We made it halfway through Baja that day. The next day, we hit all dirt road to go through Coco's Corner, over to San Felipe, and around the tip, sort of over to where we do a lot of off-road racing in Sonora, Mexico, near Rocky Point and El Golfo and that kind of area there. and we made it all the way around to, I think, El Golfo that day. So then from El Golfo, we made it all the way to Guaymas, which is where we would have gotten off on the ferry. So it took us 2 nights to get there. And we were just hammering the truck and making miles. So in the end, it cost us about the same as the ferry would have. But it was one of those moments that you went, man, we screwed up and I know it. Are we good at this traveling thing? I don't know. And
yeah, it was tough because it was like our first border crossing, right? We had crossed into Mexico and we didn't do it right.
Yeah, and you're like, great, I screwed this one up, the
what
easy
are
one.
the rest going to be like?
Yeah, you know. And of course, from there on, it went much better, and we've never had any.
From there, we understood the general process, you know, of checking out of and into a country and the temporary import permit and how it all works. But before that, I didn't understand how it all worked when you were crossing a border with a vehicle. Because no one at the border goes, okay, now you have this, you need this and this. Then you're good to go. It's like you have to know what you need to do to make sure you're okay.
Yep. All right, that's our first screw up of the trip. What's our second? So the second screw up that we did, again, as you'll notice, there's a theme. This is my fault. We were crossing into Argentina, and it was the second time. We crossed in Argentina once to go to Iguazu Falls. And they just stamp you in, stamp you out, no import permit needed because you just say, I'm going to the falls, that's fine. The next day or a few days later, we say goodbye to our friends Tim and Shannon. They're heading north, we're heading south into Argentina. So we cross into Argentina. At the border crossing, a young border agent decided that he wanted to look through every document and ask his boss about it. And so it turned into a much more involved border crossing than any we'd done in Argentina or Chile.
And this was a big border crossing with lots of things
super
happening.
Busy.
And we were kind of parked in like a place where the car might need to be moved, so I didn't go in with Tim. And usually I kind of keep track of all the documents. Yeah, so I hand him what he needs and make sure I get it back. And so it just didn't work like our normal process.
So I go in there, she's staying with the truck, and he's looking through everything. He's got our copies, our originals, everything, and he's asking questions on every single document. He may have been newer, or he may have just been trying to make sure maybe every 10th or 50th vehicle they check out more intensely. He checks it all out. I get all my piles back. I sort out, from the sort of the mess that's on the desk in front of him, all of our originals, get back in the truck, and I just have this sinking feeling that maybe we don't have all of our originals. So I asked Kelsey, just look through there, make sure we have them all.
And we're pretty sure at that point
we did.
But
we're also trying to make turns and get into this small little town there on the other side of the border with a million different turns and one-way streets. And so we think we checked, but we're not totally sure. That could have been where our mistake was, but we don't know. We eventually get into this little town, and we're hunting around for an insurance company because you need insurance when you're in Argentina. And a lot of these countries you do, but this particular insurance we needed to buy in this town there. We couldn't find a place before the border that sold it. So we're hunting around. Every place we go to sells motorcycle insurance for foreign vehicles, but not car insurance for foreign vehicles. So finally, we pull up to this one little place with all these, plaques on the wall, just like an insurance company in the U.S. would have.
All the big names that you would see. So, like think of it like Allstate, State Farm, like all names that you're like, oh, okay, they're big names.
Even some U.S. insurance companies or whatever, but or ones you've heard of in the U.S., not U.S. based. But we go in there and he goes, yeah, I can write you a 30-day policy for your car, but we don't normally do foreign vehicles. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. That'll get us quite a ways, and then we can go to a bigger town and get insurance. So he's got our title, registration, passports, everything again, and he's making copies, and he gets us our insurance policy. So I gather up all of our originals, leave him all the color copies. We get in the car and we head out, and we enjoy Argentina. We explore all over the place. And it's not until probably a month later, it's about the time we realize our insurance is about to lapse, we better get more insurance. So we're in Mendoza, a bigger city. We knew that we could not find our title. We were hunting for it, and we turned the truck upside down. But the reason we realized it is because we knew we had to renew our insurance.
First, after we dug through everything, the truck, everything looking for the title, we decided to look online, see if there was a phone number, an email, like even just any way to reach this office that we think might have our title. We could not find anything online, so we went, okay, we know the company, let's go find their corporate office in Mendoza and see if they can get in contact with this office.
So we knew where this location was. As Kelsey said, we could not find a phone number for him, but he had a full office with plaques on the wall, the whole deal. We find that company has a branch office in Mendoza. We walk in, we give them our insurance policy. Hey, we need to renew this. But more importantly, we think we may have left our original title at his office in the border city next to Iguazu. And so they hunt and look around and whatever. And they come back to us, and these three ladies were so nice. They said, oh, we have bad news, and we're so sorry. Please don't think all Argentinians are like this, but he's not an agent for our insurance company. This policy is not real.
In fact, this insurance company doesn't even sell insurance for
foreign vehicles.
Foreigners, yeah.
So they're like, we couldn't even have provided you a policy if we wanted to. So he took your money, wrote up a fake policy, and we don't know who he is. And so I pointed out to them on Google Maps the exact street he's at and said, okay, well, there's your fake agent. He had a lot of companies on the wall, so my guess is he either is an agent, and even in the U.S. it's hard to keep track of all the people who are an agent because you might be an agent for 5 different companies. But he did decide, you know what, I'll just write him up a policy, take their cash, not file the policy. So it's not ever going to be real, but the chances he's going to actually have a claim, minimal. So he took the money, made a fake policy, or he's a total scammer, which is probably what your perception it would be, is he's a total scammer. But when you saw this little town and a few different insurance companies, many other travelers had success at all these other ones, and this is just one other one, no more or less shady than the others.
Yeah.
So my guess is he probably was an agent, whether or not he was registered at that location, and he just didn't file the policy knowing, well, this company doesn't actually write policies for foreign vehicles, but you're going to give me 1,000 pesos? Why not? So it wasn't expensive, thankfully. We didn't lose a lot of money. We then, realizing we weren't going to be able to get a hold of this guy, we went to a new insurance company, got a new policy, but now we're stuck in Argentina because one thing that we definitely know you need, any border crossing you go to, is a vehicle title. And we had plenty of color copies, but they weren't the type of copies where they could almost pass for an original. I do think in the future, whether you think it's a little dishonest or sly, we might travel with a very good color copy. So good that if they happen to think it's the original, that's on them. If they ask for the original, we'll get them the original. But at this time, we just had color copies that were clearly a copy. And now we're in Argentina. Our visa lapses in 40-something more days. And we need to get a title into our hands to leave the country, to go on to the next country. So we're calling home, we're calling friends, emailing. We had a lot of friends, rightfully so, who wanted us to mail a power of attorney home, wait until it arrived. But as you realize if you do a trip like this, we have had a lot of friends try and send parts to the mail, letters, postcards.
If it even gets to you, it takes forever.
30 or 40% of the time, the item you put in the mail from a country down here makes it to the U.S., or vice versa, from the U.S. to down here. So mail is very unreliable, and we didn't have time to wait for that. So through a bunch of different calls, we were able to get another title, and we were able to get it sent down to us. And so we lucked out big time. But title's not something you can carry a duplicate of, but this just goes back to the other video we made on keep your originals close. And from that moment on, I'm like a hawk.
Careful.
Yeah, this guy starts shuffling papers around, and as he's on the phone with somebody or as he's looking at this document, I'll grab that original registration, kind of pull it over, and just keep them out so I know where they're at. Not take them from him if he still needs to look at them, but we sort of track them now visually as we're doing any border crossing. So that was our second screw up. That's sort of a accident, but also a bonehead move if you're being careful. So yeah, what are you gonna do? Our third screw up that we can think of off the cuff here anyways. We are leaving Brazil. We've been in Brazil for a few weeks, going up to sort of the BR 319 and seeing some pretty cool spots. We're entering Bolivia. Our friends Tim and Shannon have not done the visa ahead of time, so we know it's going to take them a few days. So we say goodbye to them. We're going to cross into Bolivia. The problem is, like we talk about in our other video, we always try and cross borders early in the day. Well, it just worked out. We've hit this border late in the day, and we're going to go ahead and give it a shot and see if we can cross. We go down to the offices on the Brazil side to exit the country. So when you exit a country, you got to have your passport stamped, so you're exited, both of us, and then the vehicle, right? You finish your temporary import permit. So we go into the immigration office, and we sit and we wait and wait and wait, and it's hours because it's the siesta time.
So annoying.
At the end of the siesta, a nice guy, security guard, says, "Oh, they've been back for a while." So he takes me back there and gets me to the right person, and he goes through our passports, he goes through all of our car documents, he cancels the temporary import permit, he gets the stamp out, and he's stamping everything, and he hands it back to us, and I say, "Okay, what else? What's next?" And he says, "Nothing next, you're good."
Keep in mind, this was a tiny little border, and that's why we didn't have a lot of other people's experiences to read about and go off of.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure how it works because it's such a tiny little town.
Yeah, we were at a border crossing that most people don't take, coming from Brazil across a little river where you have to take a little ferry to get into Bolivia. So he goes, "You're good," and it's getting late in the day, and we go, "Awesome." We drive the truck down, we put it on the ferry, and the guy says, "She can't ride on the ferry, only the driver." And so we don't even know where the human sort of ferry is, right? There's
so I say, "Bye, hope I see you over there."
Yeah, there's little pongas, little tiny dugout sort of canoe-looking boats, and that seems to be where humans cross.
We have limited cash because at this point we knew we were crossing into a new country, so we had tried to spend most of our cash, knowing that we don't have any use for it. So we have like a limited amount of cash. Limited meaning
enough to pay for the ferry and then enough to pay for her boat ride across, we think. So I just hand her as much cash as I can and say, "All right, there's no cell service around here. We have no way to communicate," and she walks off. So that was a little scary because we're in this little sort of dumpy river border town, and she's now disappeared, and I'm on the boat with Goose. We get across to the other side. I drive off with Goose. We get fumigation done. We pay for that. We go to the next office. That takes a while. And then in that office, the guy's going through all of our documents. Kelsey's met back up with me. We're both there. And he says, "Oh, you don't have the right stamp for leaving Brazil." I said, "Well, yeah, no, I went to Policia, Aduana, and they stamped everything, and it's in here. It's all fine." He goes, No. He stamped for your vehicle and your passport, but he didn't stamp for you. I should have checked. We should have, at this point in the trip, we should know. You get stamped out, your car gets stamped out, you get stamped in, your car gets stamped in, right? But I didn't check it. I was so in a rush that when that guy said, "No, there are no more steps, you're good," I went, "Well, whatever, we're good. Let's leave. Let's get the heck out of here and make it across this river into Bolivia," which we thought was going to be the hardest border crossing. I want every minute of time to get into that country before the offices close. So now I'm standing in front of this guy, and he says, "Well, I can't let you in." Well, we've been checked out of Brazil. We're now technically standing on Bolivian soil, but he won't let me in. Our car is on Bolivian soil. And I say, "Wow, so the only thing I can do is go back." He goes, "Yep." So we decide Kelsey will stay with the truck.
His name is on the registration.
Yep.
So it's easier for him. So I figure if he goes back, gets his stamp, then he can start working on importing the car.
Yep.
While I go back.
Well, we were hoping I could do both.
Yeah,
so I took her passport.
passport.
I get on a ponga. We go back. I go back to Brazil. When I hit Brazil, I'm now a mile away from the Policia, which is a different office than the other office we were at, where the guy said, "No, you're all good. Head off to Bolivia." So I'm running, and it's 100 degrees, and it's these little old ladies that were on the ponga with me are like cheering me on, and I'm running to the police station because they know what's going on. I get there, the guy stamps me out of the country, but he won't stamp her without her present, which is pretty standard. Now I sprint back, I get on a ponga, I'm going across, the sun's getting low in the sky. I get off the ponga, I yell at her, "Okay, you have to go, you go for it." I hand her 100% of the rest of the money that we have. And we're within 25, 30 cents of it being enough for her to pay for that back. And the ATMs in this area, by the way, have not been working for us, so we can't get more cash. If she gets over there and can't get back, I might not see her till the next day or something, and then I'll have to return.
By the way, once I took the ferry over there, I realized I didn't have any map. So luckily we had driven by the police station, and it was a small enough town that I was pretty sure I remembered where it was. And luckily I did. But I realized once I got there, I was like, oh, I don't even know how to get here.
Man. So it stressed me out thinking about it. So I'm over there in Bolivia trying to get myself checked in and then the truck checked in. So I'm going through all this paperwork, and he says, okay, your wife needs to sign here and here. And I was like, she's back in Brazil getting checked out of the country. And I tried to explain to him in my poor Spanish what was going on. And I went ahead with the truth because he was a young guy. I think he'd understand. And he goes, sign here, basically where she needs to. So he let me sign for her. Now the truck is legally in the country and I'm legally in the country, and I'm sitting out in the truck watching these pongas, and it's getting dark, and hoping Kelsey's on one of them and
I
something
keep
hasn't
thinking,
happened.
like, when does the last ferry go? Because I don't know, am I now 5 minutes and the last ferry has left and now I'm stuck over here? And when does the office on the other side close? I don't know.
And if that's not enough, if the office that would check her in closes, she's in no man's land. She's not in Brazil legally. She's not in Bolivia legally. And we have to wait for tomorrow for her to get checked in. And sometimes when they see a stamp out date of the day before and they go, well, where have you been for the last day? You haven't legally been in Brazil, but you haven't legally been here. It can raise some questions. So we're just hoping she makes it to these guys. So I get out of the truck and I'm standing near these guys saying, no, I know it's only 10 more minutes until you close, but hang on. And she comes running up the steps from where these pongas dock. And we had, I don't know how long, it wasn't down to a minute, but it was minutes to go before this office closed up for the day.
This is why you always get to the border early.
Man, this one drove it home. We always went to border crossings early, and when we were traveling in groups and with other people, you just kind of go at the group pace, and if they feel like going somewhere, you do it. And so we had just kind of gotten lax, I think. And this one drove home to us, no.
We can't. We have to do it on our own schedule.
Yeah, we got to go in the mornings, always in the mornings. So, but it was our screw up too from not getting the right stamp. But if we had screwed up like that early in the morning, you had a whole day to sort it out, no worries. I would say this screw up we don't have to credit to ourselves, but the sort of screw up that happened that wasn't maybe our fault was crossing from Panama to Colombia. So we crossed, we did all the paperwork right, and we're in Cartagena, and we've got an Airbnb for 4 nights, which is more than enough. We thought
was more than enough, yeah.
Yeah, 2 nights to do the crossing in the ship, our truck to do the crossing in the ship, and then 2 days of doing paperwork to get him out of the harbor, and we're hitting the road. And it turned into 2.5 weeks of waiting for the ship. The ship's paperwork was screwed up. It was stuck in Panama, hadn't even left yet. Christmas is coming. We moved Airbnbs something like 5 times. We went from an Airbnb, we went to a hostel, then we went to a hotel, then we went from the hotel to another hostel, and then we finished back at the original Airbnb.
Yeah.
And we're doing all of this with our friends Jake and Jordan, who are our container buddies. It's an app, that's why I say container buddies, but you basically find someone else to share a container with. So they were our container buddies, and we were just moving around the city. And like the hotel we stayed in was $40 one night for all 4 of us to share this room with 2 beds. The next night they wanted $160 because it was getting near to Christmas.
Yeah.
So that's why we were moving so much, is either there was no room or they were quadrupling or doubling the price on us. And so that wasn't really our fault, but that was one of those sort of things that just happens.
You just can't help it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're starting to run a little low on things we screwed up. Now, that's not entirely true because there's little things we screw up every single day. But we're trying to think of things that actually we can even remember.
Yeah.
Normal screw-ups are just a part of traveling. But once another screw-up that we did is we were going to fly home to work, right? And so in this 2-year trip, the biggest trip home, or trip anywhere really we've had, is to go home for a few months and work to help pay for the trip. So we needed to make this trip home. We go to the airport, the truck is in storage, we've sorted all that out, it's safe. I get to the airport and we're checking in and he goes, nope. What do you mean, nope? And he says, no, this isn't you. I was like, yeah, what? My ID, my passport, my ticket, they all match as far as I'm concerned. And on most of my documents I have Tim, but on my passport I have Timothy. So for international travel, I need to stick to Timothy. That's like a common sense, everyone knows that, right? I know that. I think I did anyways. But when I booked it, I I think I did Google autofill. I started typing TI and it goes Tim Huber, this, that, address, all that auto-filled in. And my ticket said Tim, not Timothy. Everything else says Timothy. And to him, that was a different name and a different person. I'm not getting on that flight. So he kind of washes his hands of it and just says, well, you need to call customer service. So I talked to customer service. They say, I find an English-speaking representative of the airline. They say, well, you booked this through American, so you need to talk to them. I'd actually booked it through their website, not American. But when I went to bill it or pay for it with my credit card, it says, oh, this is an American credit card. You must pay through our partner, American Airlines. So I actually had booked it through American in the end. I talked to American. They say, no, you need to talk to them. Was it Copa?
LATAM.
Latin American Airlines. So you need to talk to LATAM because really it's their flight. It has nothing to do with us. And I said, well, they're telling me I have to talk to you. And we're standing there in the check-in area of the airport. And our flight leaves in an hour and a half. And right now, I don't have a ticket that works to get on this plane.
Also, it's like midnight. So
Yeah.
we have a red-eye flight. So we're at the airport. Nothing is open, even if we wanted to leave the airport, because it's so it just felt stressful, I think, too.
Yeah, and we're spending all this money to go home and make enough to pay for the flights, but also to then make enough to continue traveling. And so if we cancel this flight and lose all the money, I'm basically telling her, you're getting on this flight no matter what. I'll go back and find an Airbnb. And, that idea of splitting and parting ways in a sort of crazy, wild airport in Lima just didn't sound very good. So I'm talking to American Airlines. Eventually they take pity and say, we shouldn't do this. You should have to pay for another ticket, or you should have to pay for a change fee of $250 or whatever. In the end, thank goodness, lots of talking, and they say, well, change it. Then they say, okay, it will take a little while to show up on the Latin American Airlines computers. So I'm over there in line, and I've told them now, I've made the change. It should be showing up anytime. And I would kind of get the guy's attention and wave, and he'd go, nope. And I'd get the guy's attention, wave, and he'd say, nope. So eventually they found this other ticket. They didn't cancel the original ticket, so they kept thinking I was Tim. And I said, no, I'm not Tim now. I am Timothy. There's a ticket in there for me. So I signed into that one. They were a little perplexed why there was a Timothy Huber and a Tim Huber with different seats on their flight. I don't know if American didn't cancel the other or what, but I wasn't charged. We got on the plane and went home. So that was sort of a rookie bonehead mistake. We've traveled internationally plenty of other times, but yeah, footnote, make sure
Always
everything
double-check.
is perfect.
Yeah.
And then this isn't from this trip, but speaking of flying, one of our favorite things we did before this trip was get global entry.
Yes.
So we missed a connecting flight on our way back from Cuba many years ago. And well, not many years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. But we were trying to get back to work, and we ended up having to take an extra day off, get a hotel room, buy another flight, all this hassle because we missed a connecting flight because of the line to get back into the country and get through immigration to get back into the U.S. from Cuba. And our flight had already taken off by the time we even got out of immigration. So I would say the one plus to all this mistakes that we've made is that we've improved slowly over time, making sure that we are a little bit better and a little bit better at doing all these things.
Yeah. So all of that shared with you because sometimes it's hard to admit that you feel dumb when you make these mistakes, but we all make them, and we wanted to let you guys know that we aren't awesome, perfect travelers, and we have made some mistakes, and we don't show it always. So we wanted to make sure that we're still sharing it with you.
Yeah, I think when you're super, super pissed and you've done something to screw up and you are angry, it's not the time you want to whip out the camera and go, tell me about it, because it'd just be a lot of cussing. But we did want to share with you all the mistakes that we can think of that we made, and hopefully you learn from them as well.
Yeah.
So, thanks. See you next time.
Happy trails.
Happy trails. Oh. My Ecuadorian hat.
Now that my legs are thoroughly roasted.
Yep, mine too.